I woke up from a 3-week coma to find my son standing at the foot of my hospital bed, not with tears of relief, but with a stack of papers in his hand and a lawyer I'd never seen before telling me I needed to regularize some signatures because apparently, while I was unconscious, I'd been quite busy signing away my life. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed. My body felt like it had been through a wood chipper, which wasn't far from the truth after that semi-truck clipped my sedan on I-40 outside Knoxville. But my mind was sharp enough to know that something was very, very wrong. The lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a briefcase that looked more expensive than it should, kept using words like estate planning and seamless transition, and your son's proactive approach during your incapacitation. My daughter-in-law, Jennifer, stood by the window in a cream-colored blazer I'd never seen her wear, fingers drumming against a designer handbag that definitely wasn't in her closet the last time I'd visited their modest split level in West Knoxville. "Mom," my son David said, and his voice had that practiced softness people use when they're about to gaslight you into compliance. "We just need you to confirm these transfers. Everything's already done. We were protecting your assets while you were away." Away. As if I'd been on vacation instead of fighting for my life in the ICU. Before I tell you what I did next, and believe me, what came after this moment changed everything. I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment right now telling me what you would have done if you woke up to this scene, and let me know where you're watching from. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone, and I want to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Margaret Elizabeth Sutherland. I'm 62 years old, and I've lived in Knoxville, Tennessee for the past 37 years. I'm telling you this because the city matters. It's where I built everything, where my late husband Thomas and I turned a small commercial cleaning company into the largest privately owned facility maintenance operation in East Tennessee. When Thomas died of a heart attack 6 years ago, he left me with more than grief. He left me with 18 commercial contracts, a small office building we owned outright on Kingston Pike, a paid-off house on Cherokee Boulevard with a view of the Tennessee River, and investment accounts that would have made retirement comfortable for 3 lifetimes. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it because you need to understand what was at stake. You need to understand why my son, my only child, the boy I raised to value honesty above all else, would stand in that hospital room and try to convince me that forgery was just taking care of things. I'd been a widow managing a successful business, living independently, traveling twice a year, serving on the board of 2 local charities, and hosting Sunday dinners where David and Jennifer would show up with store-bought desserts and complaints about their mortgage. I'd helped them with down payments. I'd co-signed their first car loan. I'd hired David as our logistics coordinator when he couldn't hold down a job anywhere else, paying him more than he was worth because he was my son and I believed in family. I believed in family right up until I saw Jennifer's new handbag. It was a Birkin. I knew because my friend Diane had one, and she'd told me it cost $43,000. Jennifer was a part-time dental hygienist. David made $55,000 a year working for my company. There was no universe in which they could afford that bag on their income, unless they'd been spending mine. The signs had been there before the accident, I realized later, but I'd been too trusting to see them. It started about 8 months earlier when David suggested I add him to my business accounts, just in case something happens. He'd framed it as concern for my well-being, reminding me I was getting older, driving alone to job sites, working too hard. Jennifer had backed him up with stories about her grandmother who'd had a stroke and how chaotic it had been because nobody had access to her accounts. "You're not getting any younger, Mom," David had said over pot roast one Sunday. "What if something happens and we can't pay your bills? What if the business suffers because nobody can sign checks?" It had sounded reasonable, responsible even. I'd added him as a secondary signer on one checking account, the operational account for the business, the one we used for payroll and vendor payments. I'd kept my personal accounts, my savings, and my investment portfolio separate. I wasn't stupid, but I'd given him access to the business, and apparently that had been enough. After Thomas died, I'd become more cautious about money. more aware of my mortality. I'd updated my will, established a living trust, and made sure everything was documented. David was my sole heir. Of course he was, but the trust was structured to protect the assets, to ensure the business continued operating, to provide income rather than a lump sum. I'd worked with an estate attorney, Helen Kowalski, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family wealth preservation. She'd advised me to think long-term, to protect the business that had been Thomas's legacy. "Your son will inherit everything," Helen had told me in her office overlooking Market Square. "But this structure ensures he can't just liquidate and blow through it. He'll have income for life if he manages it properly." I thought I was being smart. I thought I was protecting everyone. I didn't know I was making myself a target. The changes in David and Jennifer started subtly after I gave David that account access. They visited more often, but the visits felt different, performative. Jennifer would comment on how tired I looked, how the house was too big for me, how maybe I should think about something smaller, more manageable. David started asking detailed questions about the business contracts, about renewal terms, about client relationships. He wanted to understand the operations better in case he needed to step up. At the time, I'd thought he was finally taking an interest in the family business. I'd been encouraged. I'd shared more than I should have. Client lists, contract values, profit margins. I'd introduced him to key clients, let him sit in on renewal negotiations. I'd been grooming him, essentially, to take over someday. I just hadn't planned on someday being while I was still alive. 3 months before the accident, Jennifer suggested I should execute a durable power of attorney, just to be safe. She'd brought it up casually while we were shopping for a baby shower gift for her sister. "My mom just did one," she'd said, examining a set of organic cotton onesies. "It's just smart planning. You choose who can make decisions if you can't, and it gives everyone peace of mind." I told her I'd think about it. 2 months before the accident, David brought me paperwork from a financial advisor who supposedly recommended consolidating my accounts for better estate tax management. The documents were dense, full of legal language, and David had highlighted signature lines with post-it flags. "Just sign here, here, and here," he'd said. "It's all standard stuff." Helen reviewed it. I'd called Helen. She'd never seen the documents. That should have been my first alarm, but David had laughed it off as a miscommunication, said he'd gotten ahead of himself, that the advisor had just been doing preliminary work. I'd let it go. I'd let too many things go. 1 month before the accident, I noticed that checks from the business account were clearing for amounts I didn't recognize. When I asked David about them, he'd explained they were approved expenses, new equipment, vehicle maintenance, consultant fees. I'd requested copies of the invoices. He'd promised to get them to me. He never did. 3 weeks before the accident, I told David I wanted to review all business expenditures for the past 6 months. I wanted documentation. I wanted receipts. His face had gone pale, then red. Then he'd composed himself and said, "Of course, Mom. I'll pull everything together." 2 weeks before the accident, Jennifer stopped taking my calls for 3 days. When she finally answered, she said she'd been busy, stressed, that David was under a lot of pressure at work. She suggested maybe I was micromanaging him, that I needed to let go a little and trust that he had things under control. 1 week before the accident, I'd scheduled a meeting with Helen Kowalski to review my entire estate plan. I'd made an appointment with my bank to go through every account transaction. I'd contacted an accountant to audit the business books, and then, on a Tuesday afternoon, driving back from a job site inspection in Oak Ridge, a semi-truck ran a red light at the intersection of Oak Ridge Highway and Illinois Avenue and sent my Mercedes sedan spinning into a concrete barrier at 45 miles per hour. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the ambulance or the emergency room or the first 2 weeks in the ICU. What I remember is waking up to my son's face, hovering over me, and the coldness in his eyes when he realized I was conscious, and the way Jennifer's hand tightened on that expensive handbag like she was clutching a lifeline. "Mom?" David said again, and now his voice had an edge to it. "The lawyer needs you to sign. We've already moved forward with the estate planning. We just need your confirmation." I looked at the papers in his hand. My vision was still blurry from the coma, my body weak, but my mind was crystallizing fast. "What estate planning?" I asked, and my voice came out raspy, damaged from the breathing tube they'd had down my throat. The lawyer stepped forward. "Mrs. Sutherland, while you were incapacitated, your son exercised the durable power of attorney you executed to make some time-sensitive financial decisions on your behalf. We're here to ensure everything is properly documented now that you're awake." "I never executed a power of attorney," I said. The room went very still. David's face did something complicated, a flash of panic, then anger, then forced patience. "Mom, you're confused. You did. You signed it 2 months ago, remember? We talked about it." "I remember you wanting me to sign it," I said slowly. "I remember deciding not to." Jennifer moved from the window. "Margaret, you've been through trauma. Your memory—" "My memory is fine," I said, and I looked at my son. "I never signed it. So how did you use it?" That was the moment I knew. That was the moment when David's expression shifted from concern to something else, something calculating and cornered. And I understood that my own child had been planning this. That while I'd been unconscious, while doctors had been keeping me alive, my son and his wife had been forging my signature and looting my accounts. "We should let Mrs. Sutherland rest," the lawyer said quickly, gathering his papers. "We can revisit this when she's more recovered." "No," I said, and my voice was stronger now, fueled by rage and adrenaline. "We're going to revisit it right now. David, I want to see every document you've signed in my name. I want copies. Today." "Mom, you're being paranoid?" "Then prove me wrong. Show me the power of attorney with my signature. Show me everything you've done while I was in a coma." He couldn't, because it didn't exist. Or rather, it existed, but with a forged signature, and somewhere in his panicked mind, David was smart enough to know that bringing me a forged document while I was fully conscious was a bridge too far. They left. David muttered something about letting me rest, about discussing this later when I was thinking more clearly. Jennifer wouldn't meet my eyes. The lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear into the hospital linoleum. When they were gone, I lay in that bed, my broken body screaming with pain, and I started planning. I'd built a business from nothing. I'd negotiated with contractors and clients and banks. I'd survived my husband's death and kept his legacy alive. I knew how to fight. But this fight would be different. This fight was against my own son, and I couldn't afford to lose. First, I needed information. I needed to know exactly what they'd done. I used the hospital phone to call Helen Kowalski, my estate attorney. She arrived within 2 hours, a file folder under her arm and fury in her eyes. "Margaret," she said, pulling a chair close to my bed, "I got a very strange call 3 weeks ago from a lawyer named Richard Breslin asking for copies of your trust documents and power of attorney papers. I told him I'd never prepared a power of attorney for you, and he said he must have been mistaken. I called your emergency contact, which was David, to verify you were okay, and he told me you were traveling in Europe and unreachable." "I was in a coma," I said. Helen's jaw tightened. "I know that now. I saw the news about your accident, but David had told me you were traveling, so I didn't connect it. Margaret, I think your son has been impersonating you." She pulled out her laptop and showed me what she'd discovered after she'd gotten suspicious. Using her access as my attorney of record, she'd run a records check. In the 3 weeks I'd been unconscious, someone had transferred $340, $0 from my business account to a newly opened joint account in David and Jennifer's names, sold $180, $0 in stock from my investment portfolio, changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy from my estate to David personally, filed paperwork to transfer the deed of my Kingston Pike office building into David's name, withdrawn $75 in cash in increments just below reporting thresholds, applied for a home equity line of credit against my Cherokee Boulevard house for $250. Zero. All with my forged signature. The bank never questioned it? I asked, my voice hollow. David was already a signer on the business account. He used that access to establish credibility, and then he brought in documents with your signature authorizing the rest. The bank's fraud detection should have caught it, but he was your son. He had some legitimate access, and he spaced the transactions out just enough that no single one triggered an automatic review. How much? I asked. How much did they take? Helen looked at her screen. So far, close to $800,000, and if that home equity line gets approved, they'll have access to another $250,000. I'd been in a coma for 3 weeks, and my son had stolen nearly $1 million. They were waiting for me to die, I said softly. They were spending the money like I was already gone. Helen nodded. Margaret, there's more. I pulled the deed transfer documents for the office building. The notary signature is fake too. I called the notary whose stamp was used, a woman named Patricia Reeves, and she's never met you or David. Someone stole her seal or forged it. That elevated it from family betrayal to actual crimes, multiple felonies, forgery, notary fraud, identity theft, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. My son was going to prison, unless I could prove it all. I need evidence, I told Helen. I need a forensic document examiner. I need someone who can prove those signatures aren't mine. I know someone, Helen said. Marcus Webb. He's one of the best in the Southeast. Former FBI, now does private consulting. He's testified in federal court dozens of times. Hire him, I said. And Helen, we do this quietly. I don't want David to know what's coming. If he realizes we're investigating, he'll destroy evidence or run. Helen understood. She'd been practicing family law long enough to know that the worst betrayals came from the people you loved most, and that justice required strategy as much as evidence. I spent 4 more days in that hospital, recovering enough to be discharged. David and Jennifer visited once more, bringing flowers and apologies, saying they'd been overwhelmed and just trying to help. Jennifer cried, said she loved me, that she'd never want to hurt me. David held my hand and told me he'd been so scared he'd lose me, that all he'd done was try to protect my assets. I smiled. I thanked them for the flowers. I told them I understood, that I'd been confused, that the coma had messed with my head. I lied to my son the way he'd been lying to me. Because while Jennifer was crying her crocodile tears and David was squeezing my hand with fake affection, I was recording every word on my phone hidden under my blanket. I was documenting their admissions, their explanations, the way David described helping with my finances while I was unavailable. When they left, I sent the recording to Helen. The hospital discharged me on a Friday. David offered to let me stay with them while I recovered. I declined, said I wanted to go home, that I needed my own space. He'd looked relieved. He'd probably already started planning how to keep me away from my accounts, how to maintain control now that I was awake and asking questions. Helen arranged for a private nurse to stay with me at the house, a woman named Susan, who was actually a paralegal from Helen's firm, there to help me gather evidence as much as to help me recover. My house on Cherokee Boulevard felt different when I walked back in. It felt violated. David had keys. He'd been here while I was in the coma. I could see evidence of it. Things moved. Papers rifled through, my home office desk drawers slightly ajar. Susan helped me change the locks that first night. We hired a locksmith who came after dark, and by midnight, David's keys were useless. Then we started building the case. Marcus Webb, the forensic document examiner, came to my house the next day. He was in his late 50s, gray hair cropped military short, eyes that missed nothing. He brought specialized equipment, cameras, lights, magnification tools, databases of signature samples. "I'll need documents you definitely signed," he told me, spreading out his tools on my dining room table. "Bank records, contracts, anything with your authentic signature from before the accident. The more samples, the better." I gave him everything. 20 years of business documents, tax returns, property deeds, my will and trust papers that Helen had prepared. My authentic signature had slight variations over time. Everyone's does. But there were consistent patterns. The way I looped the capital S in Sutherland, the angle of my M in Margaret, the pressure points in my handwriting. Then I gave Marcus the documents David had filed, the power of attorney, the deed transfer, the bank authorizations, the beneficiary change forms. He examined them for 3 hours, photographing them under different lights, measuring angle and pressure, comparing stroke patterns. Susan and I sat in the living room, watching the sun set over the Tennessee River, waiting. When Marcus finally emerged from the dining room, he looked grim. "Mrs. Sutherland," he said, "these aren't even good forgeries. Whoever did this used a tracing method, probably projected your signature onto the documents and traced over it. You can see the hesitation marks, the unnatural pen lifts, the lack of variation in pressure. A real signature is fluid. These are mechanical. Any competent examiner would have caught it." "Can you prove it in court?" I asked. "I can prove it beyond any doubt," Marcus said. "I'll prepare a full forensic report with photographic evidence, comparative analysis, and my expert opinion. If this goes to trial, I'll testify. But Mrs. Sutherland, you should know, this isn't just forgery. The number and variety of documents, the pattern of financial exploitation while you were incapacitated, the use of a fake notary seal, this is organized fraud. Federal prosecutors love cases like this." "Good," I said. We worked through the weekend. Susan helped me compile a complete financial picture. Every account, every transaction, every asset. Helen filed an emergency motion to freeze all the accounts David had accessed, including the joint account where he'd transferred my money. We had to move fast because the home equity line of credit was still pending, and if that got approved, David would have another $250,000 to drain. On Monday morning, Helen appeared before a judge with Marcus's preliminary findings and my sworn affidavit. By noon, we had a temporary restraining order freezing every account and preventing any further transfers. The bank was ordered to reverse the unauthorized transactions. David's access to my business account was terminated. I didn't tell David any of this was happening. As far as he knew, I was home recovering, weak and confused, probably still unsure about what he'd done. That Monday evening, David called me. His voice was tight with stress. "Mom, something weird happened with the bank. They froze some accounts and they're saying there's a legal issue. Do you know anything about this?" "No," I said, my voice carefully weak. "What kind of legal issue?" "They won't tell me. They just said there's a court order and I can't access the business account anymore. Did you talk to the bank?" "David, I've barely left the house. I'm still recovering." "Well, something's wrong. I'm going down there tomorrow to sort it out." "Okay," I said. "Let me know what you find out." He had no idea that while he was panicking about frozen accounts, Helen was filing a criminal complaint with the Knox County District Attorney's Office, complete with Marcus Webb's forensic report, bank records showing the fraudulent transfers, and copies of the forged documents. Tuesday morning, David went to the bank and discovered his accounts were frozen too, including the joint account where he'd stashed my $340,000. He called me frantic. "Mom, they froze everything. They're saying there's fraud. They're treating me like a criminal." "Why would they do that?" I asked, playing confused. "I don't know, but I need you to call them. Tell them you authorized the transfers. Tell them I was helping you." "Did I authorize them, David?" Silence. Then, "Mom, you were in a coma. I had to make decisions. I was protecting your assets." "With a power of attorney I never signed?" More silence, longer this time. "David," I said, and my voice wasn't weak anymore. I know what you did. I know about the forgeries. I know about every dollar you stole. And I know about the fake notary seal. Mom, don't lie to me anymore. I have evidence. I have a forensic document examiner's report. I have bank records. I have recordings of you admitting you made financial decisions without my authorization, and I filed a criminal complaint. I heard him breathing on the other end of the line, fast and shallow. You're turning me in? He said. Your own son? You stole from me while I was dying, I said. You forged my signature. You committed fraud. You treated me like I was already dead so you could spend my money. What did you expect me to do, David? I'm your son, he shouted. Family doesn't do this to family. No, I said. Family doesn't forge signatures and steal money while their mother is in a coma. You did this. Not me. He hung up. Wednesday afternoon, 2 detectives from the Knox County Sheriff's Office Economic Crimes Unit came to my house to take my formal statement. I told them everything, showed them everything. They were professional, thorough, and clearly disturbed by what they were seeing. Mrs. Sutherland, the senior detective said, this is one of the clearest cases of elder financial exploitation I've seen. The problem is, your son is likely going to claim you gave him verbal authorization, that there was a misunderstanding about the power of attorney. These family cases can be hard to prosecute. That's why I have this, I said, and I showed them the recording from the hospital where David described making decisions while I was unavailable, and Jennifer talked about moving forward with estate planning. I showed them the timeline Helen had prepared, demonstrating that every fraudulent transaction occurred while I was unconscious. I showed them Marcus Webb's forensic report with photographic evidence of the forgery. The detectives looked at each other. This is solid, the younger one said. This is really solid. They arrested David on Thursday morning. He was at the business office on Kingston Pike when they came for him with a warrant. Charges included forgery, identity theft, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and fraud. Jennifer wasn't charged yet, but she was named as a co-conspirator in the complaint. David made bail that afternoon. His lawyer called Helen and suggested we work this out as a family matter without prosecution. The lawyer hinted that David would agree to pay everything back if I dropped the charges. No, I told Helen. This goes forward. He doesn't get to buy his way out of consequences. The business community in Knoxville is small. Word spread fast. By Friday, 3 of my largest clients had called to express support and confirm that their contracts were secure despite the family situation. The story made the local news, not with names, but as a cautionary tale about elder financial exploitation and the importance of protecting vulnerable adults. David and Jennifer's Facebook pages, which had been full of photos of their new BMW and Jennifer's jewelry and captions about blessed life and so grateful, went silent. The home equity line of credit was denied. The bank reversed the unauthorized transfers, moving my money back into protected accounts that only I could access. The deed to my office building was returned to my name. The life insurance beneficiary was changed back to my estate. It took 6 weeks to untangle everything David had done, but eventually, every dollar was accounted for. Some of it had been spent: the BMW, the jewelry, a weekend trip to Miami they'd taken while I was in ICU, but most of it was recovered. David's trial was scheduled for the following spring. His lawyer continued to push for a plea deal, for a settlement, for anything that would keep David out of prison. Helen and I refused every offer. He needs to face consequences, I told her. He needs to understand that actions have weight. 3 months after his arrest, David called me. It was late, past 11, and I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mom," he said, and his voice was wrecked. "I'm so sorry." I didn't speak. I know saying it doesn't fix anything. I know I destroyed everything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I got desperate. The mortgage, the credit cards, Jennifer's spending, we were drowning. And then you got hurt, and I thought if you died, I'd inherit everything anyway, so what did it matter if I took it a little early? I thought I was just accelerating the inevitable. You thought I was going to die, I said. So you started spending your inheritance. Yes. And when I didn't die, when I woke up, I panicked. I thought if I could just get you to sign off on everything, to validate what I'd already done, it would be okay. I thought you'd forgive me eventually. You're my mother. That's what mothers do. Mothers also teach their children about accountability, I said. I can't forgive you, David. Not for this. You didn't steal from a stranger. You stole from me while I was fighting to survive. You were hoping I'd die so your crime would be easier. That's not desperation. That's sociopathy. He was crying. I could hear it in his breathing. Part of me, a very small part, wanted to comfort him. But the larger part, the part that had built a life through hard work and integrity, knew that some betrayals were unforgivable. I'm not dropping the charges, I said. You're going to face trial. You're going to accept the consequences. And then you're going to rebuild your life without me or my money in it. Mom, I'm done, David. I loved you. I gave you everything. And you tried to rob me on what you thought was my deathbed. We're done. I hung up. The trial happened the following April. Marcus Webb testified for 2 hours, displaying blown-up photographs of the forged signatures next to my authentic ones, explaining the forensic markers that proved the fraud. The bank's fraud investigator testified about the pattern of unauthorized transactions. Helen testified about the fake power of attorney. The notary whose seal had been forged testified that she'd never met me or David. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. David was sentenced to 4 years in state prison with restitution ordered for the money he'd spent. Jennifer divorced him before he was transferred to the correctional facility. She never apologized to me. She never acknowledged her role. She just disappeared, taking what was left of their life and starting over somewhere else. I didn't attend the sentencing. Helen represented me and read a victim impact statement I'd written. In it, I talked about trust and betrayal, about the unique pain of being victimized by your own child, about the importance of protecting vulnerable adults, even when, especially when, the threat comes from family. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd presided over family court for 20 years, told David that elder exploitation was one of the most insidious crimes because it weaponized love and trust. She told him that his mother had survived a near-fatal accident only to discover that her son had treated her impending death as a financial opportunity. She told him that 4 years was lenient given the severity of his crimes. David cried. He apologized again. It didn't matter. The sentence stood. I rebuilt after that. I hired a new logistics coordinator for the business. I updated my estate plan to leave everything to charity instead of David. I installed a security system at my house and changed every password and PIN I'd ever used. I joined a support group for victims of family financial exploitation and discovered I wasn't alone. That elder financial abuse is shockingly common, and often perpetrated by adult children who view their parents' assets as their future inheritance and decide not to wait. I shared my story. I spoke at community centers and senior groups about protecting yourself, about the warning signs, about the importance of documentation and independent legal counsel. I became an advocate for stronger elder protection laws in Tennessee. It's been 2 years now. David is still in prison. He writes me occasionally, letters full of apologies and explanations and promises to make amends. I don't respond. I've moved past anger into something colder and more final. He's not my son anymore. He's a person who committed a crime against me, and that relationship is over. I'm still running the business. I'm 64 now, healthy, recovered from the accident. I've traveled to places Thomas and I always planned to visit. I've reconnected with friends I'd neglected while I was building the company. I've learned to trust again, carefully, with boundaries in place. But I'll never trust like I did before. That's the real loss. Not the money David tried to steal, but the innocence I had about family. I believed that blood meant loyalty, that a mother's love was always returned, that my child would protect me the way I'd protected him. I was wrong. And if you're watching this and you're in your later years, if you have adult children who are suddenly very interested in your finances, if people are pressuring you to sign things or add them to accounts or make things easier by giving them control, please learn from my story. Protect yourself. Question everything. Don't assume that family members have your best interests at heart just because they're family. Get independent legal advice. Use forensic document examiners if something feels wrong. Document everything. Record conversations if your state allows it. And most importantly, understand that you have the right to keep control of your own life and assets until you choose to give it up. David thought I was weak because I was unconscious. He thought I was an easy target because I was old and hurt. He learned the hard way that I'm neither weak nor easy, and that betraying me was the worst mistake he ever made. Leave me a comment telling me your thoughts on family and forgiveness when it comes to financial exploitation. Do you think I was too harsh? Should I have given David another chance? And if you've experienced something similar, I want to hear from you. We're building a community here of people who refuse to be victims, who stand up for themselves, who understand that dignity and self-respect matter more than maintaining toxic family ties. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about taking back control, about standing up to betrayal, and about the quiet power that comes from refusing to be anyone's victim, even when that person is your own child. Because in the end, the greatest inheritance I can leave isn't money. It's the lesson that you don't have to accept abuse, that you can fight back intelligently and strategically, and that justice, real justice, is worth more than false family peace. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves, protect your assets, and never, ever underestimate the power of a woman who's been pushed too far and decides to push back.